Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're plunging into, well, a really challenging question, actually.
Mm.
Can something as, well-intentioned, as universally praised as environmentalism, aimed at saving the planet, could it inadvertently lead us somewhere darker, towards authoritarianism?
That's a provocative idea.
It really is. Our deep dive today is built around this article by Naser Karami, Green Ideals, A Path to Authoritarianism. And he coins this term, green totalitarianism.
Right. Green totalitarianism. And what he's getting at essentially is a system where environmental urgency becomes the driving force.
Okay.
And that system, he argues, inherently fosters things like obedience, a strong sense of authority, and really extensive government intervention in people's lives.
What the unsettling part?
The really unsettling part is how he suggests this could happen. Not through some obvious coup, but potentially emerging from democratic processes.
Yeah.
From, the best intentions.
Exactly. Our mission today is to try and understand those subtle ways that might happen.
Yeah, the mechanisms.
And let's be absolutely clear right up front. This isn't about denying the environmental crises. They're real, they're urgent.
Absolutely not.
This is about looking critically at the solutions being proposed. What are their potential long-term impacts on society? Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
So the starting point, Karami's basic premise, solving these huge, escalating environmental crises seems to require a really powerful government.
Right. One that can step in, intervene significantly in society.
It sounds almost logical on the surface, doesn't it? Like a necessary step.
Yeah.
But how does that power actually get built, according to the article?
Well, the suggestion is that it often starts with fear, instilling a deep public fear of the crisis.
Okay.
And that fear can then make people more willing, maybe even demand obedience. Just tell us what to do to fix this.
Ah, I see.
So you get these three things lining up: obedience, authority, and intervention. And Karami says, look, those are the hallmarks of an autocratic system. But the key takeaway here is how it could emerge. Not necessarily violently, but maybe democratically. Push forward by these, seemingly noble goals. Save the planet.
That's a striking thought. It really challenges our basic assumptions about democracy always leading to, well, stability or the right outcomes. Does the article give examples of this?
It does. It draws this really fascinating comparison between Afghanistan and Tajikistan.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So Afghanistan, had democratic structures, international support for years.
Yeah.
But after the foreign withdrawal in 2021, well, it collapsed incredibly fast when the Taliban took over, like less than a week.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, you look at Tajikistan, it's been under Emomali Rahman, who's become more and more autocratic over time. But counterintuitively, perhaps, it's become stable. It's seeing economic growth.
So the article's point is?
The article points out this uncomfortable observation. 30 years of trying democracy in Afghanistan didn't, in that instance, create lasting stability. Whereas this authoritarian rule in Tajikistan seemingly did.
Mm-hmm.
It forces you to question that automatic link we often make between democracy and stability, especially when stability becomes the absolute priority.
And the article brings up another model that seems to prioritize stability maybe over other things, the China model.
Exactly, the China model.
Yeah.
And the article explicitly notes this applies to Russia under Putin, too. It's seen as this growing influence.
And what defines that model, according to Karami?
Three main things, really. First, ruthless exploitation of natural resources, just going after whatever is needed.
Okay.
Second, suppression of popular movements. Anything that might disrupt the plan or challenge authority gets shut down.
Right.
And third, a kind of economic imperialism, extending influence globally to secure resources and markets.
And China's justification for this?
It's presented very starkly in the article.
Right.
Feeding 1.3 billion people is job number one, period.
So everything else is secondary.
That seems to be the implication. It justifies the resource use, justifies suppressing dissent if it interferes with that primary goal. The article even makes this intriguing analogy. It compares it to Hitler's, quote, mistake. Suggesting Hitler didn't secure his global supply chains before launching invasions. China, the article implies, is learning that lesson, making sure it has resource access locked down globally.
Wow. That's quite the comparison. Does it give a concrete example of this resource focus?
It does. It talks about Chinese industrial trawling in the Persian Gulf.
Trawling, that's the really destructive fishing method, right? Big nets dragging the seabed.
Exactly. Catches everything, damages the ecosystem immensely. And the article points out these Chinese boats are operating thousands of miles from home.
Why there?
Several reasons mentioned. Strategic ties with Iran, for one. They get fishing licenses, sometimes even operate under Iranian flags, apparently.
And the result.
Predictable, really.
Yeah.
Fish stocks get depleted, which leads to clashes with local fishermen who depend on those waters.
Hmm.
And here's a kicker. China apparently restricts trawling in its own waters, saving them, preserving them as, like, future food reserves.
So protect their own, exploit others.
That's the picture painted. And connecting this back to the main theme,
Right.
if environmental problems get truly critical globally, this idea of saving the Earth could become the justification for exactly this kind of powerful interventionist government.
Even emerging from democracies.
Especially if those democracies are operating under what feel like emergency conditions, they could start to look a lot like classic autocracies, like Putin's Russia.
So if environmental challenges push governance this way, what's the human trigger point? What makes people accept it?
And the article points straight at the most basic need: food.
Food. Makes sense. It mentions that huge number, 1 billion people hungry globally.
Yeah, calls it the greatest famine in history. But then it adds a twist.
It's not the traditional famine, like drought caused.
No. According to the source, the bigger issue is this mismatch. Food production is increasing, but often arithmetically, like 1, 2, 3, 4. Population can grow geometrically 2, 4, 8, 16.
Ah, the Malthusian idea.
Kind of, yeah. That gap plus unequal distribution. And the fact that agriculture just hasn't modernized at the same crazy speed as, say, communications or medicine.
So we put more pressure on resources.
Exactly. More overfishing, clearing more rainforests for farmland. You see the cycle.
Which leads to a pretty scary scenario. If things get bad, if food becomes genuinely scarce because of environmental crises, people might welcome some kind of environmental Superman.
Precisely. Someone who promises, I can fix the environment, I can guarantee food.
But the price.
The price, the article emphasizes, would almost certainly be absolute authority, total control over land, resources, people.
Oh, wow.
It quotes a Turkish proverb,
Yeah.
men are kept in love by their stomachs. The parallel being, if people become utterly dependent on an autocrat for basic survival for food, well, that dependence could become perpetual.
Chilling. The article also talks about democracy itself, right?
Mhm.
Its own limitations in dealing with this stuff. Uses an analogy about water.
Yeah, the water analogy. You only really appreciate water when the tap runs dry. When it's abundant, you forget its value.
Like democracy, maybe.
That's the idea. And it connects to this feeling some activists have, especially in non-democratic states. This feeling of being stuck behind the wall of politics.
Meaning
Meaning they feel like they can't make real environmental progress until democracy arrives first. It sort of questions that whole end of history idea that liberal democracy is the final answer to all human problems, especially these huge, complex environmental ones.
So, does the article find any proof that democracy automatically leads to better environmental outcomes?
Actually, no.
No.
The source suggests there isn't clear evidence for that direct correlation.
Really?
In fact, it makes the counterargument that autocratic governments, because they can plan long-term, because they have broader powers, might actually be better equipped, let's say, to handle complex environmental issues compared to democratic leaders who are always facing the next election, have limited terms, fragmented power.
That raises a really difficult trade-off, doesn't it?
It does. The article puts it starkly. In some situations, people might prioritize environmental sustainability, basic survival over individual liberties or democracy. Life is impossible without resources, after all.
And if global warming goes past 2 degrees Celsius, those trade-offs might not seem so abstract anymore.
Exactly. And there's another wrinkle. Sometimes the early stages of democratization can actually be bad for the environment.
How so?
As old controls loosen, but new legal institutions aren't strong enough yet, you can get a free-for-all. Resources get plundered by populations eager to exploit newfound, well, freedom before effective regulations catch up.
Okay, this is complex, which leads to another disturbing idea in the article, this instrumentalization of crisis, specifically ecofascism.
Right. Ecofascism, defined in the source as extreme nationalism, but fueled or influenced by environmental crises.
Can you give an example of how that plays out?
Sure. The article mentions direct conflicts over shared resources, like Turkey's big dam project, the GAP project. It affects water flow downstream to Iraq and Syria. That can easily stoke anti-Turkey nationalism there, framed around water scarcity.
Resource wars, essentially.
Could be. Or indirect tensions. Think acid rain in Sweden caused by industries in, say, Scotland. Or island nations literally sinking because of emissions from countries thousands of miles away.
So much for global problems uniting humanity.
Yeah, that post-WWII ideal gets challenged here.
Mm.
The article argues environmental issues can just as easily fuel division and extreme nationalism.
And it links this directly to the rise of populism globally.
It does. It notes how calls for global unity at big climate summits. While they can sometimes sound uncomfortably like the rhetoric used by historical strongmen, Stalin, Hitler, Mao, Mussolini, they all talked about unity.
Unity often meaning silence dissenters.
That's the danger, right? Unity can easily become a code word for suppressing anyone who disagrees with the plan.
And populists are good at seizing on crises.
Exceptionally good. They thrive in critical situations, offering themselves up as the simple solution, the savior. Environmental crises are tailor-made for that kind of appeal.
We see populism rising everywhere, the article notes, across the spectrum.
Yeah, it lists figures like Bolsonaro, Duterte, Erdogan, Putin, Modi, Xi, even mentions Brexit, and points out that these figures often gain power despite media opposition. They represent dominant global forces now.
So the nightmare scenario, according to the article, is environmentalism becoming the ultimate populist tool.
Potentially, yes. A tool to push back democracy, leading, as the source graphically puts it, from red Stalins to green Stalins.
Wow. Okay, let's shift to how these warnings themselves are used. The article talks about a double-edged sword with apocalyptic warnings and control.
It uses the phrase apocalyptic propaganda, likens it a bit to how the insurance industry uses fear.
A little fear is rational, keeps you alert.
Right, but constant high-level fear-mongering. The article suggests it's like a drug. You need bigger and bigger doses to get the same effect. And it can backfire.
How so? Is there evidence for that?
Well, it cites this big 2021 Youth Climate Anxiety Survey. University of Bath involved 10 countries, thousands of young people.
What did it find?
Pretty sobering stuff. Like 60% of young people felt very or extremely worried about climate change. 75% found the future frightening.
Wow.
Over half felt humanity was basically doomed. And maybe most tellingly, 4 out of 10 were hesitant about having children because of it.
That's significant.
But here's the crucial link the survey found. That anxiety wasn't just about the environment itself. It was strongly linked to government inaction, a feeling of being betrayed by leaders.
And there's this other concept mentioned from Ann Kaplan, climate trauma.
Right. Kaplan's idea of a pre-trauma political syndrome, where these constant dystopian stories, this fear of a phantom future, it doesn't necessarily spur action.
What does zoo do then?
Ironically, Kaplan argues it can make people cling more tightly to the current system, the status quo, defend what they have now against this terrifying future.
So extreme fear doesn't lead to progressive change, but maybe conservatism.
That's the argument Karami draws out. It fosters obedience, a desire for order, not protest or radical change, which, you can see, makes it a potentially powerful tool for any future autocrat wanting control.
It's almost the opposite of what you'd expect.
It is. The article recalls Václav Havel predicting after the Cold War that intellectuals would turn their focus to the environment. But now, maybe it's the autocrats who are more actively seizing this territory.
Leading to the savior trap.
Exactly. Just like past totalitarians claimed they were saving the workers or saving the nation, the new ones might claim they're saving the environment.
And this ties into one final trap the article details, the land management trap.
Yes, the Amaye Sarzamen concept from Persian. It sounds so sensible on the surface, doesn't it? Comprehensive, long-term, centrally managed plans for land and resources.
What could be wrong with planning?
The danger lies in the power it concentrates. Who gets to make these massive, inflexible, long-term plans? Who implements them? It starts to sound like those grand top-down manifestos from historical authoritarian regimes.
And the data.
That's key too. Environmental data, who controls it? Often it's governments. That gives them immense power to shape the narrative, manipulate public opinion based on the data they choose to release or emphasize.
Is there an example of this manipulation in the article?
A really stark one from Iran's population policy. Apparently, before 2010, the scientific consensus, based on ecological capacity studies, was that Iran needed population control, maybe could only support around 60 million sustainably.
Okay. Standard environmental science perspective.
Right. But then, after 2010, the supreme leader issued a command to double the population.
Doubling. That's a complete reversal.
Exactly. And suddenly, according to the source, new academic articles started appearing, funded by the government, even published in international journals, arguing that Iran could actually support 200, maybe even 300 million people.
Wow. The science just flipped.
The scientific narrative flipped to match the political agenda. It's a powerful illustration of how planning and control over data can become direct tools for authoritarian goals, completely divorced from objective reality.
So even something that sounds as benign as land management planning?
Can carry significant long-term risks for freedom, absolutely, especially when combined with that control over information and a crisis narrative.
It really is a lot to take in. So bringing this all together, we started with this paradox. Environmentalists, the movement itself, seems so inherently innocent, trustworthy, right? Driven by good intentions.
Undeniably, the goal is noble.
Yet this deep dive, based on Karami's article, suggests that even this idealism, when it mixes with crisis, with fear, with basic human needs like food, and maybe with some inherent flaws in how we govern, it could pose a threat to freedom.
It's a sobering perspective. The reality of the environmental crisis is undeniable. Our duty to be green, to act, is paramount, no question.
But
But as the source powerfully puts it, freedom remains like a defenseless city. It's always vulnerable. We have to stay vigilant, even when tackling existential threats, maybe especially then.
so the final thought for you, the listener, what responsibility do you have? Not just to acknowledge the problems, but to really critically examine the solutions being proposed.
How do we tell the difference
Yeah.
between genuine, democratic environmental action and the potential hijacking of that agenda for authoritarian ends?
What stands out to you from this deep dive today? It's something really critical to think about, isn't it? How do we protect both the planet and our fundamental